Hello and welcome along to Mondo Chelloveck Movies. My name is John, and this video is going to be my long overdue re-ranking of the Friday the 13th movies. All 12 of them, not 13 like I said in my previous video that I shot about a year ago. Can't believe it's been a year since I did it. And on my previous video, which I'll link down below, I did talk about where I thought Friday the 13th would rank in my mind at that time. And then I thought I'll go and watch them and I'll see where it is, see if they change places. Now, it's took us a year to get round to that, but I've done it and I was such a blast with it. I really enjoy this franchise. It is my favourite franchise of all time. Now, you might be surprised, like I'm surprised about where I've ranked some of these films. But I'm just being honest. This is how I like them at this point. They might all change. I think I've had all of these in every permutation you can imagine. But at this point in October, it's now November 2024. This is how I rank them. At number 12, down one from my previous ranking, is 2003's Freddy versus Jason. Now, a lot of people might put this at the bottom, and I can understand why anybody would put this at the bottom. It doesn't feel, this is the one that doesn't feel like it belongs with this franchise, with this box set. But it does have Jason in, but I feel this is more like a Freddy Krueger movie. Now, originally, I think on my previous ranking, I said that I'm not really a fan of this movie, and I put it on, and this is the one I was least looking forward to. I know it's at the bottom, but to be honest, I've enjoyed all of these ones a lot more. The ones that I didn't like, a lot more than I did when I first watched them, or first grew to dislike them, should I say. I'm going to say on this watch, I enjoyed this one a lot more than I usually do. I don't know why, I watched it and I enjoyed it. And this is the first time I probably took any notice of it, really, and not being annoyed by the fact that there's a few things in here that I don't really care for. The fact that Jason looks a bit weird in it, and the fact that Freddy is like the boss of this movie when I prefer Jason to be the boss. I know this is classed more like Nightmare on Elm Street Part 8, and this was like a crossover. And to be honest, it doesn't really work as a Jason movie. It works more like a Freddy movie. But what I will say on this watch, this is the first time that I've actually noticed how colourful this movie is. And it's in this box set here, and I know this is going to come out in 4K as well. The picture quality on here looks stunning. The colours are amazing. And I think this would make a great 4K. So at number 12, that's Freddy versus Jason. At number 11, down two, is 1988's Friday the 13th Part 8, Jason Takes Manhattan. Now, in this watch, I do consider Friday the 13th Part 1 to 8 to be the original kind of character art, the original franchise. Should have just been that. And all the other ones seem to be more like add-ons, and the other ones I can treat like standalone movies. Because when I put these on, when I watch Friday the 13th Part 1, I've always got to watch the whole lot. Now, sometimes you think I've got to watch 12 films, and I've really blasted through these movies because I've enjoyed them that much, and you think that's a lot of movies to watch in one go. But actually, on this run through, I could watch Friday the 13th Part 1 to 8, and that could be me done with the franchise. And then I could move on to the other ones and watch them as standalone movies, so I could get, like, say, the remake out and watch that by itself. So I've thought about that on this one. I don't need to watch the whole box set in one go, which makes this experience a little bit easier to do, even though I've watched them all in a few days, actually. But this one here, the downside of it is Jason Takes Manhattan for the last 10 minutes, and it's more Jason on a boat, which I don't mind actually. If this had been just Jason on a boat and they hadn't done the Manhattan thing, or they hadn't put it in the title, and you did go to Manhattan, you would feel like this was a bit more of a. I mean, I know it run out of money, and it's a bit more. There's a few problems that they had with that whole thing, but I do think that this it does sort of take away from it a little bit because it promises so much and doesn't deliver. Now I knew that going into it, and it does actually. I put this down two on my list, but this goes up in my estimations every time I watch it. I'm not a big fan of the ending. I know this kind of ends the franchise, kind of in a way. I'll get more into that down the line, but unfortunately, I do feel like the latter Friday the 13th from 1 to 8 do suffer from the fact that we're heavily cut. I do enjoy them, but I do wish that the gore had been heavy in it. Now, the Freddy versus Jason and etc. after this one, they all seem to get really gory, which I think is something that they needed in the Friday the 13th because it got a bit tame, sadly. But it is a good movie. I do enjoy it. There's some characters in here which I have a great time with. I think it's about 10 minutes too long, and I do think if it had had more of the Manhattan, or they took the Manhattan out of the title, it would have been better in my eyes. So at number 11, that's Friday the 13th, Part 8, Jason Takes Manhattan. So at number 10 and down 2 is 1987's Friday the 13th, Part 7, The New Blood. This has been one that I didn't like at all when I first saw it, and it's one that's gone on my estimations every time I watch it. Some of the characters in here are absolutely brilliant. So you can see this film is more like Carrie versus Jason, with this girl with telekinesis, and she's using that against Jason. Quite an interesting take on it. I know they had to change things to make this a bit fresh, but this is all right. Don't get us wrong. I like a lot of things about this, but on this watch, I've just enjoyed other ones better than this. I'm not taking away any of these ones. All the ones on here, I can give you a spoiler alert, I've enjoyed them all. And some of them I've enjoyed much more than I thought I was going to do, and some not so much. This being one of them. I thought this would have been higher, obviously, in my previous ranking. But on reflection, I do find that there's other ones in here I've had a better time with this time round. So number 10, that's Friday the 13th, part 7, Carrie versus Jason. Sorry, The New Blood. So down two places at number 9 is 2009's Friday the 13th, the remake. Now, you may think, well, all of these are going down. Now, when I say they're going down in my estimation, it's just my ranking of this time. I've enjoyed the experience of other movies more than this. That's not taking anything away from this. I really enjoy this remake. It's one of the best remakes that was done around about that time. I think the 4K on here looks absolutely sensational. Look at that. I put in there, that's my original Friday the 13th ticket for this. And my seat, I've showed this before, but my seat was F13. I mean, how great is that? So that's living in there, and I've kept it out there so you can just see it at a glance rather than putting it in the box, you know. So for me, this is just a good reimagining of the Friday the 13th, and I do like the fact that there's no spoilers in this. I do like the fact that they talk about it's kind of like 1, 2, and 3, and maybe even 4 rolled into one. The thing that I didn't really care for that much on this watch was the fact that Jason doesn't seem to be this entity that he is in the other ones. He seems to be more of a regular person, if that's something I can say. He's more like someone who's like a hunter gatherer and or a tracker or a trapper, and that's okay. But I prefer more of his the fact he's like invincible. That's kind of what I like about Jason, and I found I was thinking about that more on this watch of this. But obviously, I watched the full cut on here. The full cut's about 1 hour 40. I do think that Friday the 13th are better when they're 90 minutes. I don't think they should. I mean, yeah, this is really gore heavy. It's probably the goriest one out there. But I do think personally for a good Friday the 13th movie, it should be 90 minutes or just under. And I think I get a better enjoyment out of it. Jason Takes Manhattan is at 1 hour 40, which I think it kind of drags a little bit on the boat. If they just chopped that down a little bit, kept all the gore in, of course, which they didn't, it would have been a much better experience. But really enjoy this movie. Really think it's one of the best remakes out there. But at this point, it sits at number 9. So that's Friday the 13th, 2009. So at number 8 and up 4 places is 1993's Jason Goes to Hell, the final Friday. Yeah, right. This really surprised me because every time I've watched this, I did enjoy it when I first saw it. Yes, it's ultra gory, one of the more gory ones out there. It's got some excellent gore effects in it and some really good kills in it. But every time I watched this previously, I like it less. And this was another one like Freddy versus Jason. I thought, oh, I'm not really into it, but I'm going to have to watch it because I want to watch the whole lot. And when I watched this, I really had a good time with it. I was surprised at how much I enjoy it. Now, the takeaway I got from this was that I can watch this as a standalone movie because, really, without any spoilers, Friday the 13th Part 8 kind of has an ending. This one ignores that one and starts off again. It's like a it's like a bit of a reboot to be a completely different film. Now, I do think that every now and again in the Friday the 13th, when they have a movie that's a bit different to the other ones, I do think they need it to break them up because you can get a kind of run of ones that are similar and you need one that's different to kind of it's restarted in a fashion. And this does exactly that. So as you know, Friday the 13th continuity is a bit all over the place to say the least. But by this point, I think in this watch, I can just say, look, if I enjoy it, that's all there is to it. Now, because this is coming out in 4K again, I mean, these all look fantastic, especially from that box set from Scream Factory, if I can say it. They just are sensational. So I've got no doubts that the 4Ks would look absolutely incredible. And obviously, I want the unrated cut on here because this is the one I've seen more than any other cut. I haven't seen the theatrical cut, believe it or not, because in the UK, it's always been you have had the chance to see the full cut, and it's just absolutely brilliant. And when I looked at it just as a movie that had tons of gore in it, it was a great story, for want of a better word. It's kind of altering the Jason sort of saga quite a lot. But as a standalone, I can say this is good. Now, the best thing about getting a 4K of it, and you think I don't have to watch everything to get to here. I could just pick this up and watch this, and that's a great thing to have. The fact that you can watch some of these by themselves, like Friday the 13th, the remake, and watch that by itself. Freddy versus Jason would probably fit more into the Nightmare on Elm Street ones, which I'm going to do next. I'm going to re-rank all of them. But by the way, with the Nightmare on Elm Street, I'm not going to do a this is where I think about them at this point and then go back and re-rank them because I can't remember half of them, especially the later ones. I don't even think I've seen the later ones, but I've got a box set there so I can get into that. Also, I've got the 4K of Nightmare on Elm Street, which looks fantastic. So I'll do that one next, and then I'll tell you what the ranking is after that. But this one really surprised us. I was thinking when I watched it, I thought I'm having such a good time and I had to put it, higher than I would have normally put it by 4 places. I think this is the highest mover. So at number 8, madly enough, is Friday the 13th, Part 9, Jason Goes to Hell, the final Friday. At number 7, going up 3 places, is 2001's Jason X or Jason 10, Friday the 13th, Part 10. Now, I've always liked this film, but I had this really low on my list because I thought I would enjoy the other ones more. And I have enjoyed, I keep saying this, but I have enjoyed them all. I've got no problems about any of them. Freddy versus Jason, actually, I can't wait to get the 4K of that because I could watch that by itself. Although I do think it's more of a Freddy movie, as I said. This one here is just absolutely stupid. There's no getting away from it. Jason going into space and this Uber Jason, who I thought Uber Jason was in more than he was. I had very little recollection of this when I was watching it, which is quite good in a way because you're seeing this movie kind of like for the first time. The transfer on here is absolutely stunning. So this is another one that's going to get a 4K, and I can't wait to see it because when the 4K, I know I've just watched these, and I thought if I wanted to watch the 4Ks of Jason Goes to Hell, Jason X, and Freddy versus Jason, I'd have to go through the whole lot to watch them again. But I know now I could just pick these up and I could just put these on whenever I wanted to because Jason X is a kind of like another standalone movie. It doesn't really fit in with the other ones. It kind of does, but not really. But it's absolutely brilliant. It's really gory. It's absolutely stupid. It's set in space. There's some characters in here which are absolutely crazy. This cyborg woman is just insane. So there's a lot to get from this. If you just treat this like just a not a guilty pleasure, but a movie that you think is so stupid, it's unbelievable, really gory, very entertaining, and yeah, it's just a one I had fun with. So number 7, that's Jason X. So down 2 places at number 6 is 1980's Friday the 13th. Now, I've always loved this film, and I think a lot of filmmakers have to thank this movie for starting this glut of slashers off in the 1980s. And it was a great time to be a horror fan because this was like a new thing coming in, and you just couldn't wait to see the next installment. This one is slightly different, as you know, it's slightly different to the rest of them, with Jason being a different, entity in this one. I'll not go into any more into that if you haven't seen this one. A lot of people do think that this one isn't as good. I think when you start off with Friday the 13th and you think about Jason, you think about where it goes, and you watch this one, you may be slightly disappointed, but you've got to treat this like what it was. This is the start. This is the granddaddy of all these movies, and for that you've got to give it like a lot of respect, and I do. I know I've got this a little bit lower than I thought I would have done, but I'm just saying I enjoyed other ones more. I think I've enjoyed this time around. I've enjoyed the comedy that you get in these films a lot more than I have done previously. Who knows? Next time I might prefer the darker, sinister side of some of these movies. But there's no taking away from the fact that this one is just like a groundbreaker when it comes to all of this type of stuff that followed it. So at number 6, that's Friday the 13th. At number 5 and up 1 place is 1986's Friday the 13th Part 6, Jason Lives. When this came out, I remember seeing this on VHS on the video library. When this came out, I thought, my God, they are really sort of pushing the boundaries for believability. Now, on this watch and plenty of watches before it, I've just learned to embrace the fact that a lot of these don't make sense. They're a bit stupid. They're a bit daft, but I don't mind that. I just like the fact that Jason is invincible and he will come back and he will do other things in other movies. I like that. I know the spin on them has been a bit strange at times with the new blood, etc. But in essence, I just like the fact that this reminds me a little bit about Frankenstein. The Frankenstein movies, when you see them, and the Frankenstein was finished in one movie, then he was brought back in the next one, and this used to happen time and time again. I like that, how they're going to bring this person back. So this one, sadly, this one is heavily cut again, and the bits that have been cut out, even though you do get them the cut scenes, but they're on VHS quality on the extras. It's a bit of a shame they're not in the film, but it is what it is. But this one's so funny, I found. I knew this was funny. This is probably the funniest out of the whole lot, and I liked it for that. I did think there was a bit of a weird way to go because up until then, yes, there was funny people in these films, but this one was the one that was going from a funny angle. And I do think that this was a great time to have this in the franchise. And this one for me, by far, is the most 80s Friday the 13th. It just reeks the 1980s. I just like the way just the way it went. So at number 5, that's Friday the 13th, part 6, Jason Lives, for a bit. At number 4 and down 2 places is 1984's Friday the 13th, the final chapter. Yeah, honestly, some of these things are so laughable, aren't they? But at the time you thought, that's it. So when I first saw this one, when it came out in about 1984/85 on VHS, don't forget that before this, you used to go to the cinema to see all of these films. Now, at this point, the VHS market just was booming. So I think that in my mind, I don't think these were shown at the cinema. I think they were straight to video. And we just went to the video shop. We were just clamoring for that. The cinema was just forgotten about at this point. You just wanted these things in your own house. Now, when I saw this one, I can't remember if it was cut on VHS or not. This one's quite gory, actually. It's one of the most gory early ones. And when I first saw it, don't forget that this was only the fourth Friday the 13th, and it was just starting to gain momentum. Then all of a sudden, it was finished, sort of. And I thought, I can't believe it. And I was really disappointed by the fact that this was supposed to be the end. Of course, it was far from the end, but at the time, it was a disappointing watch. But every time I watch it, I do enjoy this more. Now, the only reason why this is a bit lower than I thought it was going to be on my previous ranking is because the fact is I do like the characters in here, some great characters in here, but I do prefer the characters. Mainly, I think in this watch, it's been the characters in here that have driven the movie to where they are. If the movie has got the best characters in it, or the better scenes, or the better scenarios, I will put it up in my ranking. But I think the characters in here are great, but they're just not as good as the ones I've got above it. Most of these that I've ranked, especially the top 5, has been really close, so these can be quite interchangeable. So I'm not taking anything away from any of these films. I've had a great time, probably the best time I've ever had with the Friday the 13th franchise at this point. I've really embraced the whole lot, and I can't wait to actually watch them again. So at number 4, that's Friday the 13th, part 4. At number 3, and a non-mover, is 1981's Friday the 13th, part 2. Now the 4K on here is absolutely stunning. It's one of the best 4Ks I've seen on an early 80s horror movie, bar none. Absolutely sensational. That makes me think if they can get the rest of them out in this fashion with this type of cover on, for the rest of the Friday the 13th, it would just be incredible. And fingers crossed that's going to happen. And hopefully it'll happen next year, or most of it. But this is, I do find that it's funny because when I watched this one the first time around, I mean, I've always enjoyed the early Friday the 13th, around about in the same level. But this one has always been a little bit, I think it's because Jason doesn't have his hockey mask in this one. I think that's why I prefer other ones, because he's got his hockey mask on. And I can't really fault this movie at all because it's kind of like the quintessential perfect Friday the 13th. But there's just other ones that I've had a better time with this time around. But it's absolutely great that it was great when you saw Friday the 13th and you really enjoyed that. Then they got part 2 out. To me, part 2 was a massive jump ahead. And you thought, I can't wait for the next one's coming up. The next one, of course, was in 3D. So it was just going from strength to strength. This one really this was a franchise that when it came out, you couldn't wait for the next one. And it was great to actually experience that like firsthand. I was there at the start of it, nearly. I didn't see Friday the 13th at the cinema, but I saw this one at the cinema. And then they put Friday the 13th on as a double bill. So I've been there with Friday the 13th pretty much from the start. And I think that's maybe why I like it so much. But it really everyone just blew me away to a certain extent, like I've explained in the videos. But Not taking anything away from it. A lot of people do say this is their favorite one. I can see why a lot of people do put certain ones at their favorite ones, because there is something to be had out of all of these films, I feel. Even Freddy versus Jason at the bottom. I did really enjoy it. Obviously, it'll never top this one because it misses a few things. The Jason aspect of it is not my favorite thing. It's more of a Freddy movie, so it takes that away from it. It's not got so much of the Friday the 13th feel to it, but it is enjoyable. But this one is kind of like the benchmark. If you want, well, obviously you start at Friday the 13th. I wouldn't advise anyone just to go in with this one, but it is really solid. So at number three, that's Friday the 13th Part 2. At number two, up three places, is 1985's Friday the 13th Part 5, A New Beginning. Now, what was that? Oh, there's another dislike on the button. I'm only going off what the experience I had in this run through. I expected, now, when I first saw this film, when it's come out, because obviously Friday the 13th happened, the final chapter, you thought, right, that's him done. And then this came out, you thought, how on earth can you? And don't forget, you've got no spoilers. There's no YouTube videos telling you what to expect from this. You went in not knowing anything about it. I thought, how can they bring him back from Friday the 13th, the final chapter, not going any spoilers? But the way they did it in this one, I couldn't stand this movie. I thought this is the biggest insult to anyone's intelligence watching something like a beloved franchise like that. I thought, how dare they do this on this one? But every time I watch this, I just like this a little bit more, and it just keeps going up and up and up. Will it ever get to be number one? I don't think it will, but there is a possibility to watch what was considered to be the worst Friday the 13th movie of all time at the time. It was panned by everybody. Everybody couldn't believe the state of this film. Now, this one here has obviously there has been a lot cut out of it, but there's been a lot put back into it as well, which makes this just that little bit better, because it's one of the goriest early movies going out there, especially because 6, 7, and 8 have been trimmed quite a lot, unfortunately. But when this one comes along, I feel this is a good place to reset. And I like the way that it's done that on reflection. So when this film comes along, when you're doing a marathon of all of them, it's quite a nice break to take. And also you can say the same with Jason Goes to Hell. It's a good place to sort of reset yourself, and then for the next one's coming. Although the rest of them, you can say after Friday the 13th Part 8, they could be standalone. You could watch them individually and not really, it doesn't cause any problems with the way that they are, because they don't really fit in anyway. They're kind of more that just forget everything that happened before, which is a bit strange, but that's what it is. When you get to that point, I think you've got to do stuff like that. Now, talking about how it's going to move on in the future, I don't think it's going to, and sadly, I don't think they can follow on from Friday the 13th, the remake. I think we'll have to do a reboot. There is talk of the director from Terrifier doing them, which I think will be absolutely brilliant. You do have to have, these days, you've got to have a gory Friday the 13th. Some of them aren't really gory because they're just not meant to be. And some of them have been trimmed, and some of them are really gory. The really gory ones worked for me, especially these days. You've just got to have a bit of a gore fest, especially in these type of movies. So I'm all for that. I just wish, because the next one's going to be Friday the 13th, Part 13. It's an absolutely amazing part, a place to jump in on, and you could get all the hype, and all the people could be really, salivating at the like new viewers, and also people who just love this franchise. So it's got everything going for it. It's all those rights, and people just hate each other and they don't like each other and all this nonsense. But if they put that to bed and just got on with it, times, I mean, it's been 2009 since the last one. It's just a travesty that this has happened, especially because there's a lot of people, a lot of fans here just want to see more of this stuff. As well as I mentioned in this video, the characters in here are probably the best characters that I've seen in a Friday the 13th movie. I've always liked the characters. I just didn't like this movie. But now I just think it's so good. I don't know why I think it's good, but I think it's the characters that make it. You've got that girl who does that strange robotic dance. You've got the bloke with the chocolate bar. You've got the fella with the axe who just loses his mind. It's just brilliant. It's just so much fun, and it's so different. It needed it. I know it's a lot of people would think, "What? You've got this above all the other ones, and it's number two." I know, I can understand that. I'm just saying at this point, I just really enjoyed it, and I do enjoy this. Will it ever be number one? I don't think so, but you never know. I can understand why people don't like this film. I couldn't stand it when it first came out. It took me a while to get into it, but I found once I embraced it for what it was, I really did enjoy it, and I can't wait to see this again. It's been the one that I've enjoyed the most, kind of, from this. I know there's a number one coming up, which I bet you can't guess. So yeah, at number two, strangely enough, but I make no apologies. I really enjoyed it, and it's my ranking after all. That's Friday the 13th, Part 5, A New Beginning. And at number one, surprise, surprise, is 1982's Friday the 13th, Part 3, 3D. While this film does have its issues, I'm not saying it's perfect. This is where Jason gets his hockey mask, which is I'm a big fan of that. This has got the ultimate nostalgia trip for me. I went to see this twice at the cinema in 3D, and I just had such a blast. I think if I hadn't had that experience at the cinema, this might be lower down. I just, when I watch it, I'm transported to that time when I saw it on release, and I just could not believe what I was seeing. The special effects in here, or the 3D stuff, just looked amazing. It was like something I'd never seen before. They were playing all this stuff, stuff and poles at the cine, the camera, and things, yo-yos, and things dropping on people's faces, eyeballs popping out. This just ticked the box for me. I know it looks a bit ropey now, but I don't care because it just transport me back to another time. I think nostalgia is a big thing about this whole franchise. I can feel how I felt when I originally saw these ones for the first time. But this one has always been my number one from that time because of that experience in the cinema. I can't not put it at number one because I'm always transported. I'm quite prepared for other ones to come along on another watch and say, I really like that one these days, so this could be higher up. But I don't think anyone's going to top the nostalgia trip for me. Unless there's a brand new one come out and it does, which I highly doubt, unless that's one's in 3D, who knows? But this, and weirdly enough, I mean, I love the character of Jason in this. I think this is how I like them, the stalker, and he's like indestructible. Also, but I will say that the end girl in here is one of my least favorite end girls. I think she really gets on my nerves, unfortunately. I like the cast in here, it's got a great cast, it's got some, but like I say, there's other movies where the cast is better. I do think part four is good, part five is brilliant, part two is good as well. But for some reason, like I say, the nostalgia trip is all there, and I like the way that this is just put together. I like the whole pacing of it. I like everything about it. Like I say, the end girl doesn't really cut it with me. I think she's a bit of a, she's not my favorite end girl by any means. I think the end girl in part two is the best one for me. But nostalgia trip times 1,000 for me. I just can't get over the fact of how great this was in the cinema. If I could go back in time to any time and say what would I like to do, the one thing I like to do is to go and relive this and just sit there and experience this again. And every time I watch this one, the memories come flooding back, and I can remember exactly where I was sitting in the cinema at this point. I was sitting halfway up to the right, and that was where I sat in exactly the same place, more or less, when I went to see the Bay City Rollers some years later. Can you believe it? So yeah, so that has been my ranking of the Friday the 13th films. Now, will I do another one in maybe the next time I do it? If it changes a lot, I probably would put a re-ranking out and I'd explain why they have changed. Now, what I probably might not do is if there is going to be all the 4Ks come out next year, fingers crossed, I don't think they'll come out in 1 year. I will do another one when I watch the 4Ks. I'll probably say which are the better 4Ks. But on these ones from Scream Factory there, I've got to say that I've enjoyed the picture quality on here more than I've enjoyed anything this time around. It's been a long time getting around to them. Is the best that I've ever seen these films. This is the lowest one, unfortunately, because of the 3D. It does affect the picture quality somewhat, unfortunately. But I'm so glad that I've done it now. I really can't wait to see these all again, but I'm going to put it off until the 4Ks are coming out. But if the 4Ks aren't going to come out for 3 or 4 years, I will definitely watch these again before then. So, yes, it's been a bit of a strange ranking, but if you're here at the end, I just want to say thanks for watching. You take care, and I will see you in the next video. Cheers.